Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about writers groups. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about writers groups because I am currently in a writers group. It's really almost an ideal writers group. It's worked really well. What we do, it's me and one other writer, so it's very small, right? And we're local, so we can actually meet together physically, and we're at the same table. We meet at Starbucks once a month for 1 hour, right? And I'm going to explain what the structure and actually, so you know what? Before I dig into that, let me talk about why I'm going to be talking about this and where and what is the boundaries of what I'm going to talk about. So what I want to talk about today is what to do with a writers group and what not to do with a writers group. The reason why I'm talking about this is I'm not sure. Normally I talk about tabletop role-playing games. The reason why I'm talking about writers groups today is I am a writer. So I have written 2 novels. I've written Gamersgate and Amerindian 2192. I have written over 60 articles on tabletop role-playing games, spanning virtually all the major rule systems, Dungeons and Dragons, of course, Fate, PBTA, many other Cypher, many other major rule systems for tabletop role-playing games. In addition to that, I've written several short stories, and I actually just recently finished a tabletop role-playing game, which is currently being shopped around for a publisher. And actually right now, I'm waiting for a publisher has taken that under review, taken the copy under review, is reviewing it and deciding if it's going to be, if there will be a home for it with that shop. So, that is, that's where I'm currently at. So I have a lot of projects. I love to write. I write 5 days a week. Basically, I write anywhere from a half an hour to an hour and a half a day, and actually 5 days a week, not every single day. Sometimes I'll be on a project and I'll be writing every single day for a few weeks, but on any given day, it's more likely that I'm writing than I'm not, right? And so, and also, I just want to say, if you're a writer, you need to get to that pace. You need to get to the pace where there are more days you're writing than not writing. It's really critical, right? In a given week, right? Even in a given month, whatever your frequency is, I wouldn't go longer than 3 every month. But on any given day, it's more likely that you're writing than you're not writing. Right? It's really important. You have to have a pace and that's the one thing I've recently learned is you absolutely have to build a pace, build a time into your schedule where you are writing, right? So one of the reasons why I'm talking about writers group today is I am currently in a writers group. That writers group has been successful for about 3 years now. I have previously been in a writers group that I did not think was successful. I have gone to many writers' conventions, and I have listened to many panels on writers' groups, and heard some of the very, very best science fiction and fantasy novelists talk about writers' group, what should be done, what shouldn't. And then one of the reasons what's prompting this specific video is I'm about to go into a second writers' group. So a buddy of mine who we have, this successful writers' group, he circled in with a new writer. And that writer requested us to join a 4-person writer group that we're going to be going into, right? And one of the things that, so this new writers group is brand new, right? And so we're entering into this zone where we're going to be going into this writers group, and this new writers group is going to be structured completely differently than our current writers group, right? Now, I have concerns right out of the gate with the structure on this writers group, but I'm keeping my mouth shut. And one of the reasons why is when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to do this thing, you want to give them a chance, right? You want to let them roll with whatever idea they have, right? And it's okay if that fails, right? And there are some things with this new writers group, the structure, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work, right? But whenever you're invited into a thing, whoever is providing the momentum and the energy for that thing, let them get their full run, right? Don't get your nose up in there and try to change things before it really has a chance to succeed, right? So I have concerns. I'm hoping I'm completely wrong and everything goes the way it should with this writers group, but this is prompting me to think what works in a writers group and what doesn't. So let's talk about it. All right, okay. So one of the reasons why I'm talking about this is we've had this successful writers group for about 3 years. I just want to talk about the structure of that, right? So one of the things that, and actually we tried things, we made some changes and all kinds of things were happening, right? So one, I really feel like writers group, if at all possible, should be in person. You should be meeting with the person in person, right? If that, if you live far away from each other and you can only meet once a quarter, once a season, once every 3 months, that's enough to prompt a writers group, okay? But ideally, we've been doing monthly, and I think that's great because it really works well for a good frequency. That, writing doesn't happen very quickly. It takes time, and so a monthly meeting is great for a writers group, okay? A bi-weekly meeting, I think, would be really good for writers week, and I think weekly meetings for writers group does not work. It is too frequent, okay? So just my take on that, on the frequency of the writers group. Now, what should the writers group focus on, right? Well, one, during your writers group, in my opinion, you should not be reading content that you've actually written, right? And you should not be doing editing during the writers group. Now, lots of writers group love to do that. They'll read like a page, 2 pages. Each person will do that, and then everybody will critique the writing right there, right? Now, the reason why me and my friend moved away from this is one, generally, writers do not need help with the quality or the craft, okay? That is a very easy thing to get good advice for. There's lots and lots and lots of good advice for that on how to get that done, right? However, getting your work done, talking through the ideas, and being accountable, that is what a writer's group should be for, right? And the reality is, if you're doing that, if you're coming together once a month, once every 2 weeks and saying, this is what I'm currently writing on, this is my idea, this is where I'm heading with this idea, I could go down this path, I could go down that path, what do you guys think, right? That's a great, there's a lot of value in that. People can bring ideas to you and say, I would go this direction, I would go that direction, right? Also, you could say, in every writer's meeting, when you meet, you should say, this is what I've written since the last time we've met. This is how much I've written, this is my dedication and my commitment, and you got to be on the honor policy, right? You have to be honest with everybody in that writer's group and say, I didn't write jack since last week. And everybody can say, you stink, like, in a loving way, right? They can say, that's not good, man. You need to get on it, right? Because I know that your story is good, so what are you going to do this month to get back to writing at a good pace, right? So you have to be accountable. So accountability, knowing that once a month, or even just, oh my gosh, writers groups tonight, I got to admit I didn't write anything, right? That's important. So accountability is absolutely critical, right? And then the other thing is, what are you doing with what you've written? That's the next one, right? So accountability, talking over ideas, accountability, and then what are you doing with your writing? Who's it getting sent to, right? And encouraging each other on getting value out of what has been written, right? What publisher are you sending that to, right? What is your plan to get an agent? What is your, are you going to post that on a website, right? Is there old content that isn't moving anywhere that you can post publicly for free, right? Because you've tried 10 times to sell it and it hasn't sold, and now, it's time to just publish it so that people can read it for free, right? Whatever, so basically, don't allow anybody in your group to have a drawer novel. Don't allow anybody to have writing that they're not doing anything with, right? So energy, momentum, what are you doing with what you've written, right? Now, this is a good structure for a writer's group, okay? So what doesn't work from a writer's group perspective, right? Well, let's talk about that, right? So one, we talked about it early on. A lot of people think that writer's group is like, oh, let's print out, 2 pages and we'll pass them around and everybody can do a red pen edit, or let's read it out loud and then everybody can jump in, right? So here's what happens with those, and here's why that is a terrible idea for writer's group. And I will say this, the writer's group the structure that I just talked about, every writer in those groups, as they're talking, needs to watch out for the following problems within these writers groups. Okay, so one, when you are critiquing each other's actual writing, okay, which I actually think is a pretty big waste of time, right? Now, what if you actually need editing? One, you should either buy it, or you should have one person in your group actually take the time to edit all your content, right? Like all of a piece, all of a short story, or all of a novel, right? Somebody in your group, sometimes they'll be willing to do that, right? And that's okay. And the way that should be done is you should give it to them through Google Docs, and let them just tear it up, actually make the edits in there, and then you could actually just accept those edits or take those edits out, right? That's the fastest, best way to do it, right? And that's the way to do editing seriously, right? This piecemeal, oh, I like this piece, I like, your material there sounds like Jane Austen, and I think it should sound like Bronte, actually talking specifically about the art craft in 2 pages is a complete waste of time. A ton of people love to do it. Absolutely love to do it, right? And I want to talk about motivations for writers groups. Writers groups can be incredibly damaging and a waste of time. And the reason why is writers are incredibly personal about what they write, okay? And so when you're critiquing each other for here's a couple pages, and the person says, oh, you use the word very too much, or I don't like how this one character's written. Whenever you're getting this advice, right? So one, you may actually have a real problem in your writing, okay? And there's a chance that there's going to be a smart writer there who is like, okay, I recognize this problem in your writing, how you're writing this character, or patterns that are in your speech that are in your writing craft, your writing style, that need to get removed. But the reality is, it's far more likely, especially in writers groups, that a whole lot of things are going to happen. And here's all the different problems that can happen. So one, I struggle with this, and I need to be incredibly aware of this, right? Writers groups are helpful and they're useful, and you should take the time to do them, right? But there is a huge number of people who are attracted to writers group because it gives them the activity. It feels like writing, and it's not writing, right? And so, writing is an incredibly frustrating activity, right? And so writers groups can give people the flailing, the activity of writing, but not actually the productivity of writing. And often people are most attracted, and this is very true for me, I'm most attracted to being in a writers group when my writing is suffering and when I'm not writing much at all. And I just love to sit there and cut apart somebody else's writing and kind of down them, or even small slight snubs, things like that, right? Writers just love to tear each other down and tear other writers apart, either because they've been successful, or because the writer that you're actually critiquing had some success and you're jealous, or because you have been writing like crazy and nobody cares about it, nobody's reading it, or because you've been writing like crazy and you didn't get the exact publisher you wanted. Or, there's so many frustrations in writing, and the ability for those frustrations to come out in writers group is just, it's so powerfully present, right? And and writers group can really become, if it's not carefully guarded, writers group can really become, I'm frustrated with my writing, and you're a dog I can kick, right? Which is terrible. Nobody should kick a dog, and nobody should kick the writer, right? But often that's what a writers group is. So understand, when you move into a writers group, right, that's what you're guarding against. You're guarding against the pettiness of one writer for another. And it can break down on so many levels, right? So you can have good writers who are frustrated with their current progress, who are lashing out at other writers within the writers group because they're frustrated with their current progress. You can have a good writer who is not frustrated, but is just struggling personally and having a bad week, or something like that. You could have Writers who are bad, not even good at craft, right? But love to tell other people what they should be doing, right? And really have no business doing that, right? They really shouldn't. They're really not good writers, and they really don't. They shouldn't. And one person should not. And no one should be listening to them with their writing, right? There's just so many ways that writers groups can go south, right? However, with the writers group structure that I talked about earlier, where you say, "This is my idea. This is where I'm heading," right? This is what I wrote this month. This is what I'm doing with my writing, right? This is powerful. This is genuine. This is useful, right? And it puts up significant guards toward all those horrible writer group activities that can happen, right? And it guards against some of the worst things that can happen in writers groups, right? And also, if you're structuring the writers group the way I just said, right, what you can do then is you can reach out to someone in that writers group and say, okay, hey, I'm ready. Can you edit one? You say, I'm getting ready to send this out. Can you edit one chapter of my novel? And from that, you should, I'm going to listen. And you're picking the person you trust the most, who's proven to have good ideas and good energy, and to really like you and care for you, and to be giving you good advice because they're a good person and they're not bitter. You know what I mean? And the reality is, when I'm saying that writers are, writing is a solitary thing, and a lot of writers are brooding and thoughtful. And so, so these are very real concerns, right? So what you want to do is take your writers group, all right, that you've used, and then just, kind of say, okay, I'm picking this one person. I trust them. I need this novel edited. Now, what you want to do is say, hey, can you edit one chapter of my novel? One chapter. And from that, they'll be able to say, hey, you use the word very way too much. You use adjectives too much, right? Your punctuation and your spelling is horrible. You need to get it professionally edited. Or, hey, you're great at this, right? This is love. I love this chapter. You're ready to go, man. Move forward with good intentions and goodwill. You're set, right? So, and then basically get your editing from one person, and realize when you come forward with that you are asking for a lot. For even one chapter of editing, that is a lot, right? And then let that other person go, you know what, I'm going to do the whole thing for you, right? Or offer, and then be ready to accept when they say yes. Say, that's great, thank you, I appreciate it, right? So that's my advice on how to do a writers group and what not to do for a writers group. Take care.